Hey, my dear, today we are talking about harnessing the power of your mind chatter. I am leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I know that most of us spend our days running around chasing all these fires, solving everybody else's problems, and never getting to the stuff that matters to us. And so I give you both the inner and outer tools to turn that around so you can move from surviving to thriving in both leadership and life, because I think they are both equally and vitally important. Today we're talking about thoughts, about that mind chatter. And so whether you are joining me live or whether you are on the replay watching this, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me to explore our thoughts. Why do I want to talk about thoughts? See, here's the thing. Everything I talk about, everything I teach you, everything I preach to everyone around me boils down to our thoughts. And there are about 5 things that I need you to know about your thoughts. First, you have them, and I know you know that, but we have thoughts. Second, thoughts are connected to our experience in life. What we think is what we get. What we think is what we experience. So our thoughts are connected to that. You have the ability to manage those thoughts and control those thoughts, and that many of those thoughts are unconscious. And that's the other part that I want you to get, and the powers in harnessing. So today we're going to talk about, we all have thoughts. Those thoughts impact our experience of life. Most of those thoughts are unconscious. You can turn that around and control them. And when you do, that's when they become more powerful. So that's what we're going to talk about here today, because like I say, everything we do, whether we're talking about leadership, whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about health and wellness, whether we're talking about productivity or, that sense of willpower and staying focused on what we want to focus on, getting done the performance appraisal, working on the budget that we need to work on, having the conversation with our kids, everything boils down to our thoughts. So we're going to spend some time getting really connected to those thoughts. And this lays the foundation for much of what I will continue to teach in the coming weeks and months. It's our thoughts. So our thoughts, here's what most people think. We have a thought and then we, experience life. Sorry, let me back that up. There's something that happens, and that's our experience of life. And so right now, I'm not a hockey fan, but I know the Oilers are in the playoffs. And so some of you are going, yay, yay, go Oilers. Others of you are making some other comments that maybe aren't so optimistic. And the reason for the variance of emotions regarding the Oilers being in the playoffs is because we have thoughts connected to that. It's that thought in the middle that we often miss. Oilers are on playoffs. I have an experience around that. The thought is, Oilers are my favorite team. I think it's great that they're in the playoffs. It's about time. Whatever your thought is creates that experience. The same is true when we're talking about the connection to being stuck in traffic, somebody interrupting you when you're trying to get paperwork done, the ability to maintain your weight or your relationships, all of that. We miss the thought in the middle sometimes, and that's what I want to slow down and look at today is what's the thought we're having. And here's the thing. The incident happens, we have a thought, and then we experience it. It's that thought that's actually a perspective. Your perspective is how you see that person, that situation, that event. It's that perspective that's really, really important to look at. And that's what we spend a lot of time doing, is examining that perspective and then shifting that perspective. So if you're in my Blueprint for Change course, which is a program designed to help you sort of get unstuck and get moving in life, you know that we talk about, where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what do I need to do to get there? Half of that, or 99% of what do I need to do to get there, is changing my thinking. Instead of thinking, I don't think it's possible, think what would make it possible. Instead of thinking, I'll never be able to do all of that, think, what could I do today? Or what parts can I do today? Or where do I need help? That's part of that thinking, right? If you are in my Women with Grit program, you know that we're talking about what's the type of leader I want to be and what's the impact I want to have on the people that are around me. And so we're stopping to think about, what does it really mean to be in integrity? And integrity what's important about that for me. And so we start looking at the thoughts around what makes a good leader. And maybe a good leader is not simply putting out fires all day, but maybe choosing which fires to put out and choosing which conversations I'm going to have. And that moves me more into being the type of leader I want. So it's coming back to those thoughts. But it's the perspective on that thought that's really important. So your perspective is your belief, your assumption, your judgment. It's your expectation you have about that person or what's going to happen. It's your attitude about the event. It is your opinion, your attitude that you're bringing to this. And again, I careful not to say challenge, because challenge is a perspective. But think of it as your view or your filter or your lens that you put in front of you, and that's how you see the world. So I see my daughter through the filter of I'm her parent. So I have a very different filter or lens or judgment or view than her teacher might have. You might see somebody through the lens or the filter of their ethnicity, right? That's that type of person, right? We put that filter or that lens or that opinion in front of that person, and we see them first as they have that race, or maybe they're that gender. Guys are always like this, girls are always like that. And we put those filters or lenses in front. That's a perspective. And that's what we want to get to in everything that we're looking at doing in life. Like I say, whether it's leadership, whether it's, having a good relationship with our partner, whether it is maintaining our weight or our health or our fitness, whether it's balancing our budget, whatever it is, that attitude, that opinion can get in the way if we're not careful. And so I come back to, we all have thoughts. It's our thoughts that create our experience in life. And many of those thoughts are unconscious. And that's half the battle that we have. It's the unconscious thoughts. You can change those thoughts, and when you change those thoughts, you begin to change your experience of life. So that's the important part. I'm going to pop over here, guys. I forgot to do this. So I'm going to pop over here in the middle of this. I'm going to share this into my Confident Women Leaders group, because I got busy chatting with you and forgetting that I needed to do that. The Confident Women Leaders group is a private Facebook group, and if you're not in it, I will make sure that at the end of it I put a link so that you can join me in there. But the Confident Women Leaders group is a group for women who are in leadership or aspire to be in leadership position and wanting to ensure that they're doing their best at that, wanting to develop a network that's going to support them as they do all of that leadership stuff and balance life. How do I be the best leader I can be? Okay, just give me a sec. We should really only be doing one thing at a time. All right, it shared it to the Confident Women Leaders group. And so if you're looking to increase your confidence in your leadership, if you're looking to develop a network of support, if you're wanting to create more connections that are going to help you be that most powerful leader you can be, most impactful leader, the type of leader you really want to be, doing the work you want to do, ask to join that group. And again, I'll put a link after I'm done this video so that you can click on it to ask to join that group. What I thought I would do is give you a bunch of examples of how these thoughts and these perspectives all connect to our experience. So let me think of the first one. The first one I thought I would share with you is my struggle with weight. And so if you've followed me, if you've watched any of my videos, you'll hear me say, many years ago I lost a significant amount of weight. And every once in a while I creep back up and I have to pull myself down and I have to sort of watch. And sometimes you'll hear me say things like, I have a constant battle with my weight. It's a constant struggle to maintain my weight. And so when I have that perspective, when I have that thought, what that tends to do is make me anxious, makes me fearful or worried. And what I then do is I beat myself up when I'm not eating healthy, when I'm not, maintaining my weight. And so the thought I have about I have a constant battle with my weight leads to a perspective of it's hard, it's difficult for me to manage my weight. And that creates that experience of it being hard and difficult. When I shift my thoughts and my perspectives to, let me read this because I wanted to kind of word it. And again, this is where we have to practice this stuff. As long as I keep an awareness of my eating habits, I maintain a healthy weight. So when I can start to shift that from it's a battle to I just need to keep a constant awareness, it lightens that up for me. It moves it away from heavy and hard and difficult to actually, I'm kind of that person who likes to gamify my life, becomes a little bit of a fun challenge. Can I record my weight daily? Can I record what I'm eating daily? And can I stay within this frame, right? What is it that I can do? And sometimes I go up and I look at, okay, so what do I need to tweak to bring myself down? How much have I ate today, and what can I eat, and what can I change in my eating to shift that? So I move that perspective from hard and difficult to it's a little bit of a game, and it changes my experience. So instead of maintaining my weight being hard, maintaining my weight becomes more easier, more funner, and more manageable. So that's one example. Let me give you another one. I made lots of notes so that I could walk you through. Because again, I really want to be clear on this. This takes practice, this takes work. And like I say, this is really one of the foundation pieces of everything I teach you. It's getting control of those thoughts, managing those thoughts. That takes practice. You got to go back to this again and again and again and start figuring out, what am I thinking? How is that thinking impacting my experience? What's the unconscious part of it? Where can I turn it more conscious? Start having different thoughts. So, one other one that I know that I struggle with, probably not as much as I used to, but some people struggle with this one a lot, is the urge to check email almost constantly, right? We know that to be more productive, we should only be checking and responding to email once or twice, maybe 3 times a day, but not in there constantly like this, beep, 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 and responding to every notification that happens. But the thought that we often have is, there's an email, or there might be an email, somebody might need me, I better check my email. And we have this tendency to check it repeatedly. So the thought is, I need to check my email. The feeling that we have is a bit of anxiety. It's a little bit of nervousness. It's a little bit of overwhelm, because it's like, I got to check it, right? And so when we do that, what we tend to do then is feel like I have to check it constantly. And the behavior that we're creating for ourselves is this checking it instead of doing something that's really important to us. So instead of, writing that report that we said we were going to do, we're checking email again. And we're not getting to that stuff that's really important to us. So what we have to do is come back to, what are the thoughts I'm having? The thought I'm having is, somebody's going to judge me if I'm not checking and responding to email quickly. What we do is we equate success or responsiveness to, I need to be responsive in an hour or 5 minutes or whatever it is. That's that belief that we have. Remember, the assumption is your belief, your thought, your opinion, your judgment. So the belief I have is that people expect me to respond to email every 5 minutes. That people are going to judge me if I'm not responding to email every 5 minutes. That in order for me to be seen by others as a good leader, as responsive, that I need to be checking email every 5 minutes. And that creates that craziness. So what we need to do is come back and shift that thought. So the thought that I rewrote, it is something around the effect of, well, A, I can't control what other people think. B, the type of leader I want to be is getting done the priority stuff, and email isn't a priority, right? And so sometimes we have to bring ourselves back to that. Email is not a priority. The priority today is to work on this project, to have this meeting with this person, to make this phone call, whatever the priority is that you've identified for the day. And then coming back to, email fits in, but lower down the list. It fits in, at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or wherever it is. And coming back to then, so if it's not a priority, then I don't need to be doing it. The third thing the thought that you might want to start thinking about is that expectation about, does it really mean that responsiveness is 5 minutes? Like, seriously, is that even realistic? Is that the environment I want to create in my organization? Is that the the way that I want to role model leadership to other people is that I'm responding to every email within 5 minutes. What does that then say about my expectation of them? I mean, I want them to do the work, but then I'm also expecting them to respond to emails every 5 minutes. And so you start to look at that perspective that you have around responding to emails every 5 minutes, and you start to shift it around. Actually, responsive to emails to me means 2 to 3 hours. And while I can't control what other people are thinking, I can influence the culture I want to create in our organization. And so then you step away from that, urgency to be responding every 2 seconds to what's critical right now, what's important, and you start to feel more in control. You start to feel more responsive to the most important, let me try that again. Feel responsive to the most important things that you've prioritized for your day, and you feel less anxious, less worried, less fretful. Here's another example. You are laying in bed at night, and I know we've all struggled with this, and I was thinking about this because I was struggling with this last week. You're laying in bed at night and you can't go to sleep. And your thought is, I can't go to sleep, I can't go to sleep, I can't go to sleep, I'm never going to be able to go to sleep. And you create this stir inside you where you toss and turn. And that thought is something about this, for me, was what I was thinking last week was, sleep is so critical to me. Sleep is like my number one thing. And if I don't get enough sleep, it impacts my ability to do my work. It impacts my health. And so I start to then panic about that. I start to fret about that. I get myself even more worked into a tizzy about not being able to sleep. And the result is I am less able to go to sleep. That perspective is there's something wrong with me, that it's bad to not get enough sleep, that I'm damaging myself not getting enough sleep. And when we can shift that and start having different thoughts, having that different opinion, that different judgment, putting a different filter in front of not being able to go to sleep, we start to change our experience. So instead, what I did last week when I was laying there the night before I was supposed to speak and I couldn't go to sleep was remind myself that, wait a minute, I have some tools in my tool chest. I know, that sleep is important, but also that rest is important. So if I can't go to sleep, at least if I can settle my body down and rest it, that will help. And I also, have this wonderful array of tools around breathing and starting to bring myself down. So when I start to change, I can't go to sleep and oh my God, the world's going to end, to I can relax and I can slow my body down, slow my breathing down, start to relax my muscles. I have control. Rather than I don't have control, we start to change things and shift things. And so that's what you need to do. Start shifting that. So instead of laying there working myself up into a tizzy of not being able to go to sleep, I started to feel more relaxed. And yes, of course, within a short period of time, I was able to go to sleep. So changing my thoughts changed my experience. Changing that perspective I have, those assumptions, those expectations, those beliefs, those opinions that I have about what's going wrong, I shifted and changed my experience. Here's another one that you might be experiencing. This meeting's not going to go well, right? You're walking into a situation where maybe it's one-on-one, a conversation you're having with somebody, supervision, maybe it's a team meeting, maybe it's a meeting of, boards or a community meeting, and your initial thought is this is not going to go well. And maybe you're thinking, it's not going to go well because this person's going to share this. We don't want to hear this. I don't like her opinion. I think it's going to make a mess of things. Whatever. Those are all judgments, opinions, right? That's the perspective. And when we have that perspective, we create those feelings of anxiety, tension, nervousness, and it creates that experience where we start to tighten up. And then what do? Well, we start to, even before the meetings began, we start to plan what we're going to say to get back at this person. We start to think about all of the comments we can make in rebuttal, and we're setting ourselves up for a crappy meeting. We're setting ourselves up for something not going well because we're expecting it. We're building it up. We're planning it. It's not going to go well. She's going to be a bag. It's not going to go well. She's going to say something I don't want. It's not going to... And we start to, again, create this tizzy inside of us. Coming back to the beginning, we need to look at our thoughts. And so when we're shifting our thoughts, again, before the meeting even starts, recognizing that our thoughts create our experience, the perspective we're in, the opinions we have, the expectations, the attitude creates that experience, we need to start changing that. So instead of thinking this is going to be a crazy meeting and it's not going to go well, we start shifting to it's going to be a challenge. I get that. But I know we can work through this. It's going to be hard and we have different opinions. But at the end of the day, I know that we both want the same outcome for the client. How can, we have this conversation so that we can get that best outcome? When you start to do that, you start to create more hope in yourself, more optimism in the situation, and you start to get more curious. So instead of closing up and tightening and starting to defend yourself, you become more open and engaged and start to check out what's possible when you walk into that meeting. So those are some examples of how we can start shifting our thoughts. So remember, we have thoughts. Our thoughts impact our lives. Most of those thoughts are unconscious. We can manage those thoughts, and it's when we harness those thoughts that we can start to have a different experience. Those thoughts are sort of filtered through our lives through a perspective. It's like when you go to the doctor and they put that lens in front of you. Can you see better with this filter or this filter? Is this lens better or is this lens better? And what we need to do is start to notice how many of those lenses are filters, which I call perspectives. It's your attitude, your assumption, your expectation, your belief, your opinion. Those are all perspectives. We need to pull some of those perspectives back and start to see that person, that situation, that event just for what it is and start to change those perspectives. So this is the important piece that I really need you to start working on. Starting to pay attention to your thoughts. What are the thoughts I'm having and how do those thoughts affect my experience? So I've created a worksheet for you like I do every week, and it's called Changing Your Mind Chatter. And so I'm going to make a link to it when I finish this video. And in this worksheet, what you're going to do is start to notice your thoughts, notice your perspective, and change that perspective. And again, I'm going to remind you, this takes work. This does not happen easy. Most of the time, in the beginning, what you're going to do is you're going to do this after the fact, right? Oh my God, that didn't go well. Well, what was my perspective? What could my perspective have been? What was the filter, the lens, or the thing that made that all blurry and make a mess of it? And start to unpack it after the fact. So work through it. When you start to do this on a more regular basis, you'll start to become more adept at doing it in the middle of the situation or catching yourself in a perspective or noticing your opinion that you have or your attitude and changing it midstream or ahead of time. So the worksheet can be found at silverrivercoaching.com/guides, and you'll find the worksheet there. And again, it's called Changing Your Mind Chatter. So that's going to help you start looking at what's going on with my thoughts, what's happening in my mind, becoming more aware of them, starting to change them from unconscious to conscious, and then starting to manage them so that you can harness what's happening in your life, harness the power of your thoughts. When you can start changing your thoughts, shifting your thoughts, altering the way you're thinking and seeing situations, people, events, that's when you're going to have different experiences in both leadership and in life. That's when you're going to move from that survival mode to thriving, because rather than, chasing the email constantly and whatever, fire gets thrown your way and whatever phone call and whatever person's head pops in the door, you're going to be able to step back and go, what is it that's going on here? What am I thinking or feeling? Oh yes, I'm wanting everybody to like me. I'm feeling the need to please. I'm feeling the urge to, be so responsive because somebody made a comment along the way that I wasn't. But wait a minute, what's truer here? And start to examine things. And it's when we can slow down and start to examine that we really start to harness our own power, our own ability to lead, and really have the ability to impact our situation. So start to pay attention to your thoughts, notice what the opinion is, what that perspective is, and then see if it's getting you what you want, and if it's not, how can I change it so that I can have a different experience? So if you have any questions, pop them in now because I would love to answer them. But remember, you can pop over to silverrivercoaching.com/guides to get the worksheet that's going to help you start to become more aware of that mind chatter, start to notice the perspective you're in with your thoughts, and then start to change that perspective so that you can start to have that different experience, so you can start to change things. So again, take time to download the worksheet, silverrivercoaching.com/guides. work through some of your thoughts and just practice this. And if you have any questions, make sure you post them after, even if you're watching this on replay. I would love to, help you sort of sort through that. Again, you see, and I was going back to my notes, this takes time to start to really be aware of that, and it takes time to shift it. So I encourage you to put a little bit of effort into this. Bring it forward. Start to journal about this on a regular basis. What are your thoughts? What's the perspective? Is it the perspective that's going to get me where I want to go? If not, what other perspective will help me achieve the result or the experience I want to have? And how can I shift that perspective? So I hope you've found something helpful in today's session so that you can start to move from that survival to thriving, so that you can start to regain control of your life, and you can start to have that experience both in leadership and life that you want, so you can be your best self and enjoy your life. Thanks for following me along on the live session today, and I will catch you next Thursday. Thanks. Bye-bye.